Well, God bless you. A couple of weeks ago, I taught at one of our Sunday morning gatherings on finishing forgiveness. If you'd like to see it, it's on our YouTube page. I want to talk to you this morning about what comes after you finish forgiveness. Now, if the offense that you have forgiven has caused a rift in your relationship with the person, then you need to prayerfully consider how God wants you to proceed once you have finished forgiveness. And what God desires after forgiveness is reconciliation and a rebuilding of trust. Reconciliation refers to restoring damaged relationships, and trust refers to how much you are willing to open your heart to someone. Forgiveness is chiefly a matter between you and God. Reconciliation and trust, however, occur between you and the person who has hurt or offended you. Forgiveness deals with the past, whereas reconciliation and trust deal with the present and the future. Once we've forgiven, we need to seek reconciliation and determine what level of trust we can now extend to the person who hurt or betrayed you. First, I want to consider some verses on reconciliation. In Hebrews 12:14 it says, "Make every effort to live in peace with everyone." Make every effort to live in peace with everyone. And then Romans says it a slightly different way. In Romans 12:18 it says, "If possible," and I'll warn you, it's not always going to be possible, but if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. I love how God says that. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. God commands forgiveness. And the reason God can command us to forgive is because forgiveness is an issue that we declare before God. It doesn't involve anyone else. With reconciliation, however, we are dealing with the wild card of another person. They might no longer want a relationship with you, but from our end, we need to make every effort to pursue it. Now, I want to clarify something. When I'm talking about reconciliation, I am referring to reconciling with family, fellow Christians, friends, even acquaintances, perhaps socially or at work. I am not referring to criminals or active enemies who attack you. I'm not talking about reconciliation with unrepentant abusers who it would not be safe to approach anyway. In those cases, with those types of situations, when we finish forgiveness, that is the end of the matter. We can always forgive, we can always pray for a person, we can always extend God's love, even if we have to turn somebody over to the authorities. But most of our issues are going to be with people who we could live at peace with if we would only seek the reconciliation that God encourages. Now, many times, you will discover that the person who hurt you is unaware at how hurt you have been. They might be unaware that you were hurt at all, and therefore they are also unaware of the need for reconciliation. One thing I'd like you to consider is once you have forgiven something, decide whether or not you need to speak with the other person about it, or whether you can just go back to loving them as Christ would. In 1 Peter 4:8 it says, "Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins." Once you've forgiven, you can ask yourself the question, can we allow love to simply cover this sin? If so, and if there was no other damage to the relationship, simply love the person and treat them as Christ would treat them. But what if the offense does need to be handled? Either because an actual break in the relationship has occurred, or the offense was of such a nature that you do need to actually bring it up. What do we do then? Well, most run and hide. God actually would have us do something different. In Matthew 18:15, it says, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If," this is a conditional, "if he listens to you, you have gained your brother." And that's a wonderful thing. Now, these instructions of Jesus Christ are very uncomfortable for most of us. We hate doing this. It seems so unfair. He's the one who sinned. I'm the one who has to go make it right. It seems so unfair. But then I'd like you to think about it this way. Was it fair that Jesus Christ hung on a cross for my sin? No, that wasn't fair, but we sure do enjoy it. And if we'll seek reconciliation, we won't always be able to make it happen, but when it does, it will be great joy and rejoicing. So seeking reconciliation is uncomfortable, and as I've said, pursuing reconciliation won't always work. We pursue it anyway. Think about God. He is pursuing all of humanity. Does all of humanity turn back to him? No, but he still pursues. One final point I want to return to is the matter of trust. And this comes up actually with the issue of forgiveness. Often people push back against forgiveness because they mistakenly believe that they must immediately start letting that person back into their lives and trusting them as before. But God warns us about trusting those who are not trustworthy. There's a verse in Proverbs 25, verse 19, where God says, "Like a bad tooth or a foot out of joint, so is confidence or trust in an unfaithful person at the time of trouble." Even after forgiveness and even after reconciliation, when there's no open hostility, it may take time for the person to earn the trust that they have once lost. Allow God to direct your steps on this. So after forgiveness, seek reconciliation and be open to restoring trust. Ask God to help you with this, and he most certainly will.